Welcome to episode 15 of Halloween Babies Podcast. I am your host, Billy D, coming at you from Richmond, Virginia. And today's episode, I will be doing a run-through of my letterbox for everything I watched during the month of July. So let's get to it, shall we? First off, we have The Devil's Bath, a German film from 2024, directed by Severin Fiala and Veronika Franz, listed as a folk horror, period drama, history horror thriller, with a runtime of 120 minutes, and it is available on Shudder. '18th century Austria. Villages surrounded by deep forests. A woman is sentenced to death after killing a baby. Agnes is marrying her loved one and candidly prepares herself for a spouse life. Soon after, her head and heart start to feel heavy. Day after day, she's increasingly trapped in a murky and lonely path leading to evil thoughts. Maybe not just thoughts. This is a dark and slow meditation on the hopelessness and mundane, repetitive nature of life that for some can leave them crippled with anxiety and dread. From Severin Fiala and Veronika Franz, the duo behind Goodnight Mommy and The Lodge, these two love to produce bleak and palpably depressing films, so be forewarned. The lead performance by Anya Plasch as Agnes is quite impressive, particularly as the film goes along and we watch as her wide-eyed optimism is quickly dashed by married life and she becomes a husk of a person who almost wills her body to stop functioning. When she does receive a moment of redemption, the emotion that pours out of her was almost too real. Plaschke also provides the score for the film under the artistic name Soap and Skin. This film also has a lot to say about how the masses can at times rejoice in the pain of others, as misfortune for some can be viewed as good luck to others. I gave The Devil's Bath a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Maxxxine from 2024, directed by Ty West. Listed as a serial killer slasher horror crime horror film with a runtime of 103 minutes. Maxxxine is still available in theaters but should be hitting streaming shortly. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minx finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. With the tagline, "Hollywood is a killer." Ty West gives his third installment into his surprise franchise that started with X and then Pearl. Most people seem to prefer the 1970s porno slasher vibe and kill scenes from X over the psycho Wizard of Oz character study set almost 100 years ago that we got with Pearl, but some point to Mia Goth's performance in the latter as their reasoning behind that as their choice for favorite amongst the group. While Maxxxine seemed to fall flat and disappoint many viewers, especially in the third act, as if West lost focus or just ran out of steam, but I would argue that this is the most thought-out entry in the current trilogy. The film is not only capturing the grit and grime of the 80s, foregoing all the glitz and nostalgic shine that other directors would aim for, but it also grabs the hard-boiled grindhouse thriller vibe of that era by the horns and rides that beast into submission. This film is calculating in its depiction of the film industry to the point of becoming satire, and as some complain about the way the film ended, I say it had to end that way. These films were designed to go off the rails, over the rails, out into space and back. People wanted a slaughter fest, they got a shootout of divine intervention. It's all true. God's an astronaut, Oz is over the rainbow, Midian is where the monsters live, and Maxine Minx is a fucking star. I gave Maxxxine a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is The Last Stop in Yuma County from 2024, directed by Francis Galuppi, listed as a crime thriller with a runtime of 90 minutes. This is available on Prime for $4.99. While awaiting the next fuel truck at a middle-of-nowhere Arizona rest stop, a traveling young knife salesman is thrust into high-stakes hostage situation by the arrival of 2 similarly stranded bank robbers with no qualms about using cruelty or cold, hard steel to protect their blood-stained, ill-gotten fortune, with the tagline, "Never bring a knife salesman to a gunfight." This is a solid crime thriller loaded with genre actors: Jim Cummings, Jocelyn Donahue, Barbara Crampton, Richard Brake, Sierra McCormick, Alexandra Esso, and that's only half the cast. Bank robbers create a hostage situation at a diner gas station hotel in rural Arizona, and a Rube Goldberg plot plays out. Lots of people die. Sure, you've seen something like this before, but the production is solid, and the cast, I mean, come on. I gave The Last Stop in Yuma County a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Longlegs from 2024, directed by Oz Perkins, listed as a psychological horror, psychological thriller, serial killer, supernatural horror, crime thriller. With a runtime of 101 minutes, Longlegs is currently in theaters. In pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree, with a tagline, "Say your prayers." While it may not be the scariest film of the decade, Longlegs definitely swings for the fences when it comes to creating a creepy and unsettling atmospheric thriller that will keep you on the edge of your seat with bated breath. Writer-director Osgood Perkins takes a cue from Silence of the Lambs and delivers his entry into the serial killer subgenre that writhes like a snake with dread and mystery as it sets the tone of the satanic panic of the mid-90s America. Cinematographer Andres Orochi exquisitely frames every shot that pulls you in with symmetry and set designs as the aspect ratios breathe and morph. And the score by Zildji creates a truly haunting landscape. Micah Monroe plays Lee Harker, a quiet and timid, fresh-faced FBI agent with an intuitive flair who, working with Agent Carter, played by Blair Underwood, goes on the hunt for the titular Longlegs. Played with career-defining perfection by Nicolas Cage, who is almost unrecognizable, Alicia Witt also provides an excellent performance as Lee's estranged mother. Kiernan Shipka also pulls off a truly unrecognizable performance as well. The overall story may be a bit elusive and contrived for some, but when the devil is involved, all bets are off and everyone becomes a pawn in his elaborate scheme to taunt and torture us mere mortals. We get the gore when it is needed, but it doesn't get gratuitous, and is more concerned with the setup than the reveal. But yes, plenty of blood is spilled. Take all the hype for this one with a grain of salt and let the world Perkins has created tell its tale, and you will be entertained, but it will also leave you thinking because it doesn't end with a nice little bow wrapped around it. One of the interesting things about this film, the fact that Osgood Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins, had to deal with the fact that his father was a closeted homosexual for a good portion of his life, and that was a secret that his father and his mother kept from him, and that obviously played out in the telling of this story with parents keeping secrets from their children. Sadly enough, Anthony Perkins died from complications due to AIDS, and Osgood's mother passed away in one of the planes that crashed on September 11th. taking all that into account, what has Oz Perkins left us with? A satanic, supernatural serial killer film that has a lot to say about the childhood perception of home and family as a warm, safe place on the surface that broods and boils with resentment, fallibility, and dark secrets that lurk and live in the foundations beneath our feet and stretch out into the bones of the familiar shelter where misguided warmth incubates delusion and despair. The act of preservation ends up implanting a dark and sour seed that may take years or even decades to break through the surface and rear its destructive face, and when it does, we can only hope we have enough bullets left in the chamber. I gave Longlegs a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Landscape with Invisible Hand from 2023, directed by Corey Finley. It's listed as alien invasion, space, sci-fi, comedy, drama, with a runtime of 105 minutes, and it's available on Prime. Years into a benevolent alien occupation, mankind is still adjusting to its new overlords. Their technology initially held promise for global prosperity, but rendered most human jobs and steady income obsolete. When two teenagers discover the aliens are fascinated with human love and will pay for access to it, they decide to live stream their romance to make extra cash for their families, with the tagline, "They came for our love." This is a wonderfully weird and cute commentary on how we value our abilities, the role of family, class, and sanctity of art as it relates to us today as our devices and social media outlets warp and define how and what we place our values on. I gave Landscape with Invisible Hand a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Oddity from 2024. Directed by Damien McCarthy, listed as a horror thriller with a runtime of 98 minutes, and it's currently available in theaters. A psychic medium attempts to uncover the truth behind her sister's murder at the site of the crime, with a tagline, "Every murder lives on." A woman staying at her new and secluded home alone gets a knock on her door, and a strange man tells her he just witnessed someone sneak into her house. We then jump forward to almost a year later and slowly learn what happened that night. Writer-director Damien McCarthy, who gave us 2021's strange and elusive horror mystery thriller Caveat, once again displays his ability to take a small budget, a handful of actors, and a mostly single location to deliver a haunting and scary, slow-paced horror mystery thriller full of creepy figures hiding in the shadows, a bit of gore, and more than a handful of oddities and chilling images that will make you want to leave that light on in the hallway as you make your way to bed. The lead performance by Carolyn Bracken, she plays twin sisters, is quite good as she provides some witty banter that helps to lighten up the mood. Yes, the pacing is slow and you will probably figure some things out before they are revealed, but there are still plenty of surprises to be had. While not as esoteric as Caveat, Oddity does seem to exist in that same universe, and I'm definitely looking forward to more work from McCarthy. If you don't catch it in the theater, watch it at home in the dark, but make sure you have a reliable flashlight close by. I gave Oddity a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next film that I watched was Santa Sangre from 1990, but I had the pleasure of being invited on the No Bodies podcast to guest host and fill in for Lonely. So me and Susie talked about a few existential horror films, and this happened to be one of them. So if you're interested in the discussion on Santa Sangre, that should be on a Nobody's episode that will be dropping, I believe, in September. Next up is Starry Eyes from 2014, directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer, listed as a body horror mystery with a runtime of 98 minutes, and it's available on Tubi. A hopeful young starlet uncovers the ominous origins of the Hollywood elite and enters into a deadly agreement in exchange for fame and fortune, with a tagline, "She would kill to be famous." Alexandra Esso gives it all and leaves her heart bleeding on the floor in this body horror tale of the price of blind ambition and desire for success. It had been years since I first saw this and had forgotten just how gross this one gets. If you haven't seen Starry Eyes, check it out. And shout out to Christian on Exploding Heads podcast. He just got the 4K Blu-ray edition of this. Enjoy, Christian. I gave Starry Eyes a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I played a little Tubi roulette, and boy, did Tubi do me wrong. This film is called Tell Me How I Die from 2016, directed by DJ Viola, listed as a horror mystery thriller with a runtime of 107 minutes, and again, available on Tubi. When a group of college students take part in a clinical drug trial, an unexpected side effect of the experimental medicine gives them terrifying visions of their own deaths, which begin to come true. As they scramble to escape their fate, they discover that the killer is among them and shares their ability to see the future, only he seems to be one step ahead of their efforts to survive, with a tagline, "Knowing your fate is a real killer." So I only gave this a chance because it stars Virginia Gardner, but there was nothing she could do to save this horribly written and poorly executed mess of a film. I ended up giving it a 1.5 out of 5 stars. I was so aggravated with this one, it just goes off the rails completely. Next up is the animated series Scavengers Reign from 2023. With many directors, let's run through the list here. We have Benji Brook, Vincent Sui, Jonathan Job Kondo, Diego Peral, Richard Reed, Christine Jaeun Shin, Joe Bennett, and Charles Hootner. It's listed as adult animation, sci-fi epic, adventure. And one season has been released. It's 12 episodes long, and it's available on Max and Netflix. When a deep space freighter is damaged by a solar flare, its surviving crew are stranded on a beautiful and unforgiving planet. They begin to learn the true nature of this planet as they try to survive long enough to escape or be rescued, with the tagline, "Don't go alone." This is amazingly breathtaking and beautiful. The survivors of the freighter who are stranded on a biologically diverse, dangerously unforgiving, and beautifully sympathetic planet do their best to survive. The world-building creature designs are off the charts and range from simple and cute to mesmerizing and complex as our survivors traverse the landscape in hope of finding a way home. The organic and transformative nature of the alien life reminded me of Tetsuo during the last act of Akira, and even some of the scores seemed equally inspired. The episodes are short, 24 minutes, the score is calmingly poignant, I almost cried, and the interweaving storylines will keep you on the edge of your seat. I gave Scavengers Reign a 5 out of 5, highly recommended. Next up is In a Valley of Violence from 2016, directed by Ty West, listed as an action western with a runtime of 104 minutes. I rented this on Prime for $3.59. the story of a drifter named Paul who arrives in a small town seeking revenge on the thugs who murdered his friend. Sisters Mary Ann and Ellen, who run the town's hotel, help Paul in his quest for revenge, with the tagline, "A man can only take so much." Apparently, Jason Blum buried the release of this film and blacklisted Ty West because of disagreements they had over its production, and if that's true, shame on you, Jason. West has once again proven he is quite the capable chameleon of genre hopping and delivers a solid Western. Nothing new as far as the story goes. Ethan Hawke has a real cool dog named Abby that some douchebags kill, and he gets revenge. Wonderfully shot and acted, this is definitely an underrated modern Western gem. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I saw Deadpool and Wolverine. I will avoid talking about this one to avoid spoilers. You know what you're getting. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, dick jokes galore, and a bunch of cameos. Go check it out. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Humane from 2024, directed by Caitlin Cronenberg, listed as a horror thriller with a runtime of 93 minutes, and it's available on Shudder. In the wake of an environmental collapse that has forced humanity to shed 20% of its population, a family dinner erupts into chaos when a father's plan to enlist in the government's new euthanasia program goes horribly awry, with the tagline, "Dying makes all the difference in the world." Another member of the Cronenberg family steps into the world of filmmaking, and I fell victim to the negative reviews and lost hope in this one before I gave it a fair shake. That being said, I don't envy Caitlin for having to follow the multiple powerhouse works of her father or the success of her brother, but I did enjoy her knack for creating a tone and connection with characters that the men in her family seem to forego and shoot straight for getting under your skin. Caitlin seems more concerned with your mind in regards to presenting her social commentary. I enjoyed the characters and the performances and the nonchalant handling of the violence, but I did feel the story lost its steam and felt a bit slow and underwhelming at times. It does wrap up nicely, if a bit too easily, with an overall feeling that this would have worked better as a short. It is still impressive for a feature film debut, and again, it's nice to see Caitlin shining a different light that lets us see her shadow. I gave Humane a 3 out of 5 stars. And lastly is an interesting little film that I just happened to see was playing in my theater, although a very short run and limited schedule. That is The Vourdalak from 2024, directed by Adrian Bowe. It's listed as a drama, fantasy, horror with a runtime of 91 minutes. And like I said, it's available in theaters, but it should be hitting streaming very shortly. Lost in a hostile forest, the Marquis d'Urif, a noble emissary of the King of France, finds refuge in the home of a strange family, with the tagline, "Monseigneur has exquisite taste." This French period piece drama fantasy horror film is based on a novella that predates Dracula by almost 60 years. It tells the story of a marquis who, through a bit of misfortune, is left without horse or companion whilst traveling across Europe and seeks refuge at the home of Old Gorcha. We first meet the strange family, a man, his brother, sister, wife, and child, and then we are introduced to Gorcha himself. In case you don't know, Vourdalak is similar to a vampire, only their victims must be their own loved ones, so you can see where this story goes. A few things that make this film stand out are the look, the score, and the effects. It was filmed on 16mm with many exterior shots, and for the most of the film, I felt like I was watching something from the 60s or 70s, all warm and fuzzy. The score is period-based and classically inspired with ample harpsichord and string instruments that convey a sense of whimsy, but also melancholy and dread. As for the effects, here's the kicker. The Vourdalak in question is played by a marionette. Yes, a puppet. But all the performers treat this puppet as if it's just an old, stubborn, and grumpy man. The tone of the film falls somewhere between The Witch and Cemetery Man. As far as the violence goes, we get a good amount of blood, the death of a dog, and as a warning to sufferers from misophonia, plenty of mouthy chewing sounds. With themes of patriarchy that extend beyond class into the family unit, there's a lot going on beneath the surface, but you can also just hang out swinging on the strings of old Gorcha and see how this tale plays out. I gave The Vourdalak a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And with that, we are at the end of episode 15 of Halloween Babies Podcast. I am your host, Billy D, and if you could be so kind, please rate and review this podcast. If you would like to reach out to me, you can contact me on the Halloween Babies Podcast Instagram or via email at halloweenbabiespodcast@gmail.com. I hope everyone is enjoying their summer, and as usual, stay safe and stay scared.